This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside nobody on this special holiday edition, you could say, of the podcast. And the first one in a very long time as well, coming to you from my basement at the Delta Resort. And I want to get right into my two interviews here. Two guests for the price of one on this episode, as I had the chance to interview both Jake Martin and Scott Pickens, currently assistant coaches with Mid-Michigan College. Jake, also a minor league video assistant with the Colorado Rockies. Scott runs Pickens Baseball Academy, aptly named after him, and is involved with the United Shore Professional Baseball League in Utica, Michigan on the player development side. Scott also was the former bullpen catcher for the Detroit Tigers during a period of time when Jim Leyland served as skipper from 2006 through 2013. Meaning Scott joined the ball club and immediately went to the Fall Classic in his first year in the bigs, with Jim Leyland coming in and really making a miraculous run with the Tigers to the Fall Classic in that season. And then Scott ended up sticking with the job until the end of the 2013 campaign. So, very good stuff from both Jake and Scott on this edition of the podcast. Remember, everybody out there, you can follow the Detroit Sports Podcast Network on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Also, you can follow yours truly at Vito Jerome on Twitter and make me fall asleep a little bit more easily at the end of each night by doing so too. Now, enough of that nonsense, as also I want to wish all of you a Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy, Happy New Year as well. Guys, without further ado, here are my interviews now with both Jake Martin and Scott Pickens. And Scott Pickens, how are you doing? Jake Martin with me here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Scott, welcome in. How are you?
How you I'm doing great. I'm supporting some Mid-Michigan Lakers gear today, so I throw on the beanie inside. It's a little warm, but we're gonna support them out. So
beautiful, man. It looks good. You look good. Now we're going to hopefully talk well, have a really good conversation here on Tigers Talk this week. And thanks to both of you once again for joining me. And really to start off, guys, I want to get into this in a roundtable style or kind of fashion. So I'll let you know when you're up, I guess, right, to speak here, to make it as simple as possible, right, on all three of us here this morning. But start off, how about COVID-19 and its impact on you guys as assistant coaches at Mid-Michigan College, but also with your training and training all these kids despite these times with all the craziness and the restrictions. And there are so many of them right now, I know, as well, with the partial lockdown from the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and what she has come down with. So how have you guys dealt with the craziness? And let's start with Jake on this one, actually, too.
Yeah, perfect. So it's been pretty tough for us having to deal with all the restrictions. So what we've been doing to stay open and to stay running is we've done like individual lessons. So we're within like the COVID guidelines. So what we've been forfeiting is like team instruction. We haven't been able to do like a group teaching class. So we haven't been able to have like teams come in. So that's been kind of tough for our business because that's usually how we operate. And I mean, I just joined Scott like a few months ago. So he would know more than I do about like the normalcy, because ever since I've been there, there's been COVID. But just from the impact that I've seen being there, it's taken a toll on like how many people have been able to come in. So it's been kind of rough. But I mean, we've been able to maintain and keep going. So
Scott, obviously it's your time now to shine here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. But how have you dealt with the impact of COVID-19, and how is it different from in years past, too, with your training? And I know you run Pickens Baseball Academy as well, aptly named with your last name in there. Love the name, by the way. But how has COVID-19 actually impacted your training and your business?
Well, it's to the pros and cons. I'd say the cons is what Jake talked about is, it limits the number of teams that can come in, but then being that we do a little small group or individual, the teams can't tell their players to go see them. So they sign up with us then. So then we could actually see some of the new players that maybe they wouldn't have been part of our training in the off season, but they don't have anywhere to go because the high schools are all locked down or there's other places that you can't go. So it's kind of nice because it filters more in, but then we're not allowed to have the numbers. So new faces are cool, but not having the numbers is a little different because you want them to impact their training while everybody else is outdoors in warmer states. But we've started to do online. We got Twitter. We've also have just any kind of videos that we want to have. Jake's been doing a great job with that, and he'll film. And then when we get done, it shows really good points about what happened during the day. But then the kids will send it out, and then they can still be learning at home. So it's not the same as training. So we're trying to use the online videos at the same time during the small group instruction, get the most out of it to kind of broadcast back over to our clients in the world who didn't get a chance to show up.
So, Jake, social media integration is key nowadays in life in any kind of industry, and you're the man for the job, I guess, then, huh? I mean, very cool
Absolutely.
what you guys are doing, too, with that.
Yeah, so we don't even care about baseball. We're all about the clicks. That's all we care about is clicks and streams so
right, that's all it's got. I know
baseball
Scott.
Comes second.
I almost lost my coffee. Lost the coffee.
No, so social media has been really important. We're trying to get more of an outreach too, especially since there's teams that aren't able to train. We're trying to have like individual new kids come in. So I might as well plug that now too while I'm at it. Is that we're looking for more instruction. Like we're looking to give out more instruction. So if any kids are interested, or if you know any kids that are interested in getting instruction, it's like young kids like 6 years old up to college age or even pro. So we're still taking lessons. We're taking new people. It's got to be one at a time, but we're filtering them in. And then hopefully social media has had an impact. We're making some pretty cool videos. So I've had the experience with the Rockies. So.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, what you're doing, right, as a video assistant with the Colorado Rockies, Jake, big plug to you with that. And I wanted to get to this, though, really quick. Between you and Scott, how did you guys actually come to meet, though? Let's get the background a little bit about your guys' relationship and how it started for the two of you, too.
Well, speaking of social media, online dating is also a huge part of that social media.
Dating apps. I've been there, done that, man. Yeah, aren't they beautiful? Always the most effective kind of dating possible out there.
Yeah, eHarmony is the best. Another plug for that, my side business. Not actually, but
I love it.
So we met at the United Shore Professional Baseball League this past season. So we had the COVID restrictions. So I was actually there because I got hired with the Rockies, but then I wasn't able to go out because of COVID. They canceled the minor league season. So I haven't worked one day for the Rockies, but I still have this Lancaster Jethawk sweatshirt.
Looks good on you, man.
Yeah, thanks. But so I was back at the USPBL. I worked there for a few years, and then Scott got hired, and then I'll let him talk about his own story.
Yeah, so my college teammate Dan Griesbaum, he actually helped me get the job with the Detroit Tigers to be the bullpen catcher when he was there in ticket sales. So he got the job to be the vice president there, and I just called him and check on him, and they were actually looking for a few extra helpers. So I told him that I'd help out, and then I started doing that for a couple months. And that's when I ran into Jake, and I actually got asked back next year, which is kind of nice. So get 4 more months of baseball with the professional guys. We get Laker baseball for college, and then we got the youth training, and baseball and softball is really taken off. So Jake was well needed, and he comes in with background knowledge for the video coordinating. He says, I'm not real sure about these lessons, and I'm like, well, you know what? I'll show you a few pointers. I'll show you a few balance points on how the kids can feel certain things, and then you can tell them how they're feeling and just adjust them. And he's like, okay. And within, 3 weeks, he had the hitting down. And then within another couple of weeks, he's got the throwing down. And then you hear him over there. And I'm like, Jake, can you take the fielder? And so when he gets down, all the players that get down with Jake, you'll see that the players are starting to teach each other. And so then that means I have a lot of value in Jake, and the program does too, because we got other people coming in that can teach the kids to teach themselves. And that's what it's all about. So, that's how we met, but he did a good job there, and he worked hard. He was a grinder. He had he had a lot of hats on. He was staying the night at the clubhouse. I mean, he was doing everything for the guys. He had the PA announcing going on. He was pulling tarp duty. There's just a lot of stuff to, that he experienced, but just the hard work that he had. And I was like, you know what, let's try it out. And so far, so good.
He's a do-it-all kind of guy, huh? Utility player, like a Shane Halter, Ryan Rayburn. Let's dive into the Tigers' history. And Scott, your Tigers background now specifically as a bullpen catcher for the Tigers back in the day, kind of now from 06 through 2013 is what I heard from Jake, lending the knowledge and the terrific insight there for you, Scott. But, I mean, you got the chance now to work with my favorite Tigers skipper of all time, and Jim Leyland. I mean, God, I wish I was you, man, at least for a day or two back then when you served as that Tigers bullpen catcher. So how did that gig, first and foremost, come to be for you?
Okay, so let's see. We'll keep this within 10 minutes here. So I was working a college job in Longwood University, and one of my former teammates, Jeff Opalewski, was at Central Michigan University. And I moved from Longwood to Eastern Kentucky, which got me another title. And the title of college coaching is what they needed at this camp down in Florida, Jupiter, Florida. It's called Coast to Coast Athletics. So Jeff calls me and says, hey, we're going to all meet up down in Florida. Let's get back together. Haven't seen you in a while. And so I was like, all right, let's try that. And so we go down to Florida and we start doing the camp. And I start running into all these other instructors like Gene Watson and Dana Cavalier and Derek Johnson. And we're sitting around and we're having a few pops and talking some baseball, and they're kind of like, what's your story? And I'm like, well, I coached, 4 years of college ball. I just finished up independent ball for 3 years. And they're like, well, it sounds like you still got the itch. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't really want to hang it up yet, but they're like, well, the bullpen job for the Rangers just opened up. Do you want to do that? And I'm like, huh? They're like, the bullpen job for the Rangers just opened up. You want to do that? I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. And he's like, all right, I'll call the GM right now. And so Gene stands up and calls the GM. And a week later, he goes, well, must not have worked out. It might have fell through. And well, I had emailed my friends in the meantime. I was just like, hey, I might possibly be the bullpen catcher of the Rangers. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's catch up. So then Dan all of a sudden sends me a message and goes, hey, the bullpen job for the Tigers just opened up. He says, why don't you send me a resume? I'll still give it to Al. So I sent him my resume and he slides under his door, and a half an hour later, he calls me and he says, can you come out tomorrow morning and try out? And I was in Kentucky. And I'm like, yeah. So it was just really happened really fast that there's only 30 people in the world doing the job at that time. I think there was only 2 teams that had 2 bullpen catchers. Everybody had 1. And then, 2 spots open in 1 week. So I drove up there, stayed at Dan's house, and then tried out the next morning through to Curtis Granderson and Don Kelly. And then Gene Lamont talked it over with the staff, and they chose me. And it was kind of cool from there. I was like, hey, we'll see you in 3 weeks. Go up and sign he says, I threw the last pitch to Don. And then he says, hey, why don't you stick around here and catch Nate Roberts' bullpen, and we'll see you in 3.5 weeks in spring training. He hits me on the shoulder, and I'm just like, wait a minute. I was just in Jupiter, Florida a week later. It was very fast. And so it was really cool. Then we go to the World Series. And so I just hung him up in independent ball in that fall. And then the next year I was going to the World Series. So I thought my career was completely done trying to make it to the big leagues. And the next year I'm going to the World Series. And then after that, it was the All-Star games for the Home Run Derby, because the players were so nice to invite me and give me a chance to experience it. Whether we won the Derby or we didn't, it was something that I couldn't have just, went to do. So they had to invite me for that. So just a big experience after that, I guess.
So a whirlwind of a season of an experience for you. And first year, like you said already, you make the World Series with the Tigers. Being a part of that ball club, it must have been a tremendous experience. And before we really dive into that, and let's say you being a part of the team and learning under Jim Leyland and dealing with him, because I definitely want to get into that story. Hear what you have to say about Jim Leyland, my favorite skipper once again of all time, with the Detroit Tigers. But what was a day in the life of a bullpen catcher in the majors? Please tell my listeners and I all about that.
Well, you get there the same time as the staff does, because you don't want the staff to show up before the players do. They got to get a lot of stuff ready for when they get there. So you would show up maybe a couple hours before they do. You would get a workout in, then you get something to eat, shower up, get your stuff ready for someone to come in that needs to throw. So the first couple of years that I was there, I would help flip in the cages until the players would show up to pitch. And then the pitchers would pass your locker. There would be a set time that some guys would always want to throw their stuff. Some guys would just want to throw when they get there. Some guys would say, hey, we're doing it at 3:00, So you just be ready for them, and you go out and you play long toss with them. You do a dynamic warm up with yourself to make yourself ready. And then you'd play long toss, and then you catch the bullpen. And then you would start to go back towards the dugout, but then the other guy just got there. So he's walking out. He's like, hey, Pick, you want to play catch? I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah. So you go out there and you play catch with him. Then he throws his bullpen. He's a reliever. So you caught the starter who just got done throwing. He has to start in 2 more days. And so then all the relievers will start to show up. And so then you'll do that. And then you walk back in and then another guy will say, hey, quit, let's go throw. So you stay out there and you throw again. So you're probably throwing for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then that runs right into BP, which you throw 15 minutes of. So you just have to be ready to throw, I'd say. You have to keep your body in really good shape at the time. So you would throw 15 minutes of BP, and then you would go back into the locker room and change, and the other team would, get ready and take their BP, and then you would go out and warm up the starting pitcher and a half an hour before the game, and then you would be in the bullpen until anybody needed to throw. So obviously the first few innings are usually, unless the starter gets beat up, it's usually pretty relaxed. Usually like the 4th or 5th inning, everybody will go out there and start stretching, get warmed up. And then you look at the board and see where the pitcher's at, 80 to 100 pitches. Everybody kind of gets a feeling that, depending on the score of the game, usually the skippers would like to, if there's like some kind of special situation going on, no hitter or shutout, they would let them keep going. So you would know when to get ready. And so then all of a sudden the phone rings and, it's just hitting the fire alarm, and you run down and you start warm them up as fast as you can. It doesn't matter if it's a slow throwing lefty or, Zamaya throwing darts. It's you got to be ready for all of it. So basically from 12:30 to 10:30 every day for 9 months, you're kind of in that routine. Just some days start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some days, you get to the park at 1. So
speaking of Zoom himself, throwing 104 miles per hour or whatever it was throwing darts, like you said, at ya. And then Justin Verlander, another hard thrower, both in 06 were rookies. Verlander becomes the American League Rookie of the Year as well with his great campaign that season. You got the chance to catch both of them. What was that experience like, catching JV and then also Joel Zamaya?
Well, they're competitors with how hard they threw, but at the same time, they had different crafts. They're both starters in the minor leagues. So, for Toledo, you would face Zamaya for 9 innings one night and then Verlander the next night for 9 innings. So that was kind of cool for the Mud Hens. But, I don't know, the velocity was different. I know it's only a couple more miles an hour, but, Verlander had 4 different pitches where Zamaya was, more on the fastball curveball, even though he was getting better with his changeup towards the end. Yeah, I don't know. Those guys they were fun to catch, but I guess the miles per hour and the velocity, catching those guys earlier in the career made it easier for a guy that's throwing 97 or 95. A guy comes into the pen, he's throwing 93, and it's like you just caught 104 or 102, or, they didn't throw it every single pitch, but, you're catching over 100 miles an hour a lot. And then somebody else comes in the pen and they're doing some things, and it's amazing how your mind will allow it. So it's like you drive the car 90, and then you get off the road and you're in a neighborhood and you're going 40, but yet it's like really slow, right? And you can pick up a lot of stuff, the mailboxes, the trees, and the houses, everything, right? So it kind of helped me that way because your mind of like fight or flight had to pick up the distance change, but then you also were like after you got it down, then it was fine. So I was kind of appreciative to do that, to be able to catch it, because I've always wondered, how did you catch all that? I think the fastest I caught before that was 98. So, blink of an eye from the hand to the glove is 90 miles an hour. Just a blink. So the only real hard time to catch them is when you're about to sneeze. Try holding a sneeze, and the guy's in the mid windup. Yeah, that's the toughest part.
So, Scott, catching all these big-name arms, Cy Young guys that won Cy Youngs, Verlander, Scherzer, Rick Porcello. I mean, God, you just had this great opportunity that probably no other bullpen catcher ever had, Scott. Do you ever think about it that way, that with all the Cy Young Award winners that the Tigers had on their staff at one point, not that they all won, I know, Cy Youngs with the Tigers, but they did in their careers, like Ricky P. I mean, so do you ever think back to that, and do you find it surreal?
I guess I do. Well, because they're still collecting awards, so it's like it's getting more the more they do. But you get like Anibal Sanchez, we got him at 6-8, and he was the ERA winner and in the Cy Young talk that, the same year Verlander and Scherzer were. And then you have Doug Fister, he comes from where he was coming from. And then we plowed through 10 games in a row. I think it's the record still by a team. I don't want to quote myself on this, but it's like 7 games in a row with 10 or more strikeouts. And we had that record as a team. So I guess seeing Rick Porcello at 20 years of age, and Zamaya when he was young, and Verlander when he was at the start, And then Scherzer came in after a first round draft pick with the Diamondbacks, and he had a couple mechanical changes that we fixed. And so it's like, I don't know, I guess, I don't know. It's really cool for them. I mean, a fan of baseball players and a fan of them, but then you go back and you're like, those guys were all good, but everybody had some kind of talent that was like, holy cow. I mean, Inge could drive a golf ball or, dunk, or just like throw a ball off the backside of the mound and it would skip and hit the first baseman on like this big arc from third base side. I mean, they would just do weird things, but everybody had their own little talent. But now that they're getting recognized for other awards and they're holding it through, you wonder where their change was. You wonder what you saw. And I'm like, well, I guess I saw Verlander in his first 8 years career. And I guess I was the only guy that caught him because he would say that I had to catch him, or Bobby C was like that, or Valverde and Todd Jones. Those some guys that were superstitious in their routine. It was just their routine. But the interaction that we had with the pitchers of catching the ball and throwing it back to them and then telling them what you saw and what you think. And then, there's pitching coaches there too, but you do get asked. Here's a story. So we were in the first, I think it was our first road trip, and we're in the elevator, service elevator. They let the teams go in the service elevator. So it was like 8 or 9 guys in there. It's going up, and Kenny Rogers like, how'd my bullpen go today, Pick? And I was like, and I caught like 4 of his bullpens already. I go, it was all right, And I got razzed by everybody. Like, you can't say that. You're a bullpen. I'm going to tell you right now, as a bullpen catcher, you got to tell the pitcher how well he is. You got to make the glove pop. And so all the guys in the room are razzing me. And I'm like, well, yeah, but he already had a better bullpen than that. So if I just say that he has one every time, then what does that do for him? And then Kenny looks at me and he goes, you know what, Pick? I think this is going to go all right. So it's kind of like that. I guess their personalities and their work ethic. Like, I don't know how many times I saw Anibal Sanchez on a bike, or doing stretches, or their routines, or Scherzer powering up the stairs, or Verlander, doing his routine. So watching that routine and work and then trying to pass it on to everybody else, obviously everybody's different. But, there was a lot of guys that had some credentials, like Kenny Rogers held Johan Santana in the bullpen in his career while Kenny was in the middle of his. You think about stuff like that. Like, other guys' careers didn't even take off yet because these guys were in the league for like 18, 20 years. He starts in the league throwing 98, 99, and he leaves throwing 83 to 86. I mean, it's just, he's a perfectionist and like the wizard, for him to throw. And then you got Joel Power in the ball Payu at 104, and Verlander's trying to make all 4 of his pitches his best pitch and his ace pitch, and it's just, there was a lot of stuff that you would see, I guess. The cool part was, trying to settle someone down because they're a rookie or they get called up from AA and they're like shaking in the bullpen. Just adrenaline.
How was that for you then, Scott? I mean, dealing with all of their just, intuition, their adrenaline, just those nervous.
I would say the same way that everybody would compare it to their daily work. You get the routines, you get the personalities, you get what step's going to be next and where you're going to do in this room, what the next project will be that everybody's going to work on, and how that person takes it. That one's maybe lazy. This one's, this person's really energetic. Like, you can kind of bounce your own style off their personalities to figure it out. But I don't know. That's I guess I would just go off of that, but not knowing the guy, or he's a Latin and I don't speak very well good at Spanish, you just, you gotta tell them to keep their heads still. I'll tell you that much. So I learned what boca was your head and suave was smooth. So you boca suave, be like, you gotta yell at them that. Or you come up and try to give them some, some people don't like you in personal space right in their bubble because it affects their, what do you want to call it? Their, I guess their inner energy level. Like, some people don't like someone right in front of their face, where like if I got right in front of your face and held your arm out and I tried pushing it down, it might stay. And if it went down, then that means you're more relaxed wired. But if it stayed up, then you're more wired and tense. So sometimes pitching coaches can come out to the field or catchers can come out to the pitchers. And if they get right in their face, or a whole coach yells at his whole team, it can actually, the people that are wired relaxed, it can shut them down and you have a disconnect with mind and body. Whereas, and if I got in your face and you're more wired and tense and I'm wired and tense, your arm stays there and now you're fired up. You're ready to go. So I know that I can come out to the mound and be like, hey man, let's go. You got this. You and me right here through the glove. Keep your head smooth. Let's go. And so you try to get, you can't take the adrenaline spike completely out, but you can get them to focus on some other things, which is a feeling and it's not a thought. So it's kind of nice to be able to have some of that in the background. The Tigers staff had some doctors on board and some, counselors, and you just get a little bit of everything. So I guess I would tie all that in. And then you got the bullpen coaches there as well, but maybe there's 2 guys there. And sometimes a pitcher will just say, hey, come here, and they'll meet you halfway, and then they want to talk about some stuff. But you can tell that they're like, what do you think? It's like some of them but it's their first time. So what do you expect, right? Anybody would be that way.
So it's understanding all their mannerisms, right? Getting to know them, their daily routines, regiments, all of that. And then, so you're a part of the team. Did they make you feel like that you were one of them as well? Did they really welcome you with open arms too in your role?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. The guys would include you in dinners and take you out. I got invited to a lot of stuff. So just out of the blue, you'd be at your locker in spring training, and Inge would walk up. He's like, hey, do you want to go watch Ricky Carmichael's last race? And, over by, he'll be in Orlando. And I'm like, sure. And so he would take you, and you're watching the race. And then afterwards you're walking around the track with Ricky Carmichael. And it's like, that's what we're on the dirt track walking around. It's like, you don't get a chance to experience that unless they have all their connections and stuff. And for them to include you off to the side of the field was even better. Curtis Granderson and Sean Casey, those guys were big into, WWE and World Wrestling. So they would take you, and you're in the front row, and the seat's empty next to you. And the fight gets over your way, and someone grabs the seat, takes it into the ring with them, and smashes it over the guy's head. And I'm like, that's definitely real. That's real.
Yeah. Did this just happen? I mean, just surreal moments of plenty, it seems like, right? With dealing with these guys, and because of all their connections, right? Who they get to know throughout their respective major league careers.
Yeah. I actually got in a magazine holding with my arm around one of the WWE divas, and they were like, here's bullpen catcher, or here's Detroit Tigers Scott Pickens. Well, I'm next to Sean Casey and Triple X and all these other guys. I'm like, dude, this is hilarious. What am I doing? This is like, the last year I was riding a bus with, in the praying mantis position, living on $6 a day, or $600 a month, with independent ball. And then now you're flying around and you're going to all these things, and the guys are taking care of you. And it was just, yeah.
Scott, stuff you'll never forget. And then how about the experience of throwing to these guys in the home run derby? Magglio in 07, Brendan Inge in 09, Miggy in 2010. What was that like? And then when they're riding on you and the success of your arm and how efficient you are at throwing strikes. So a lot is riding on you, man.
I wish we could have redone it. And I wish we could have, which obviously it's apples to apples to everybody at the time. But, Inge was crushing them. And then during the performance we didn't. And then the next day he's hitting them up in Big Mac land. I mean, he's doing it just like everybody else is. So we didn't get a chance to get on a roll. But that was the only thing that I felt like I wish I would have done better at, if that was the case, but we didn't win any of them. So I'm always thinking, man, if I'd have done better, then they would have done better. So you always want to compete and do your best. So that was on your mind, but just knowing that you were there and you were doing it was like, this is fun. This is cool. And then, then all of a sudden they'll say, hey, do you want to catch in the game in the bullpen tomorrow? And I'm like, huh? They're like, yeah, we only got one guy from AAA around the area that could do it. We need two guys down there. Would you, instead of going in the stands, would you catch during the game? And I'm like, yeah, I'll catch during the game. Well, all of a sudden Willie Mays is, getting carted by me, and I'm catching Danny Herron warming up for the All-Star game. And I'm like, that's a nasty splitty. That's nasty. You throw it back to him, and then all of a sudden Papelbon's getting warmed up, and Bobby Jenks, and, you get K-Rod, and there's a lot of guys, and you're like, you didn't get a chance. It's just always something that just kind of tied on. You're like, oh, I guess we're experiencing this. Hey, look, there's Eminem. Or I'm throwing batting practice to Jalen Rose. They're like, Jalen Rose throwing out the first pitch. He wants to take some swings. You throw to him? I'm like, sure. They're like, hey, Eddie Vedder's got a concert at the Fox. Him and John Cusack and Chris Chillia want to take some BP from 12:30 to about 3 in the morning. You want to throw some BP? Yep. I'm not. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Always some kind of experience, celebrity encounter. I mean, you had it made, man. You were living the life back with the Tigers, it seems like. I'm jealous of you. I mean, as a big Tigers fan, I wish I was there just for one or two of those days and experiences that you did have, Scott.
Well, I'm glad to share them, and I'm glad I had them.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, definitely get a chance to see the people's routines, and then you want to pass it along the most that you can, because you want to give every kid that was underneath you at your day and age, that you want to give them a better opportunity than what you had. So getting a chance to have 2 or 3 different facilities, having multiple organizations ask for you to help them out. You get college, you get pro, and then just to share the experiences. And then I don't know, it's fun. So. Beautiful
memories and lessons to live by now. And speaking of that, lessons learned. How about the man, the myth, the legend, my man, Jim Leyland? Learning from him. What kind of lessons have you garnered because of being around Jim Leyland for all that time with the Tigers?
Gosh, put me on spot. I want to think of the best ones.
Hey, take a second. Don't worry.
Jake, is Jake still here?
Jake's, I know. I got to include him back in the fray.
No, don't take the wind out of the sails. Just keep it going with Scott.
Hey, tons of good stories, man.
You don't want to drag it down.
It's hard to resist.
All right.
No, I don't blame you.
He's a guy that would, take his shirt off his back to help out anybody. I mean, I heard him helping. There's a guy that was always in the same spot after the games, and he was always talking about, asking for some stuff. And so Leyland says, you know what, I'll give you tickets to tomorrow's game, but you got to show up. You have to show up. Like stuff like that. He would do it, and then he would see if the people would react to it. But he's helping everybody. He's always got something to say. If there's a bully in the room, even if there's just joking, like just kind of like popping off in the crowd, and somebody else is picking on someone else in the room, like he'll find a way to somehow like get a conversation with that person in the room, and then he'll start one-lining them back and forth, and he is the best. He is extremely witty, extremely smart. He's thinking 5 steps ahead of everybody else in the room, and it's not just for jokes; it's for everything. He'll walk right down the hallway and his mind's ticking and he's doing his thing. And then next time he'd be like, what's up, Pick? It's just, you let him do his thing. But at the same time, like it's always going. He's always got something, which I'm sure you got a lot to deal with. You got a major league team and you have to get them prepared for the next game. But he bought me a suit in New York. We went out suit shopping, and they took us to his favorite place, which was the guy that was there, hilarious. But so we were walking around, and I was going to get my own stuff, and I put it up there, and all of a sudden it's paid for, and you're like, it's like, I got your suit, don't worry about it. He's like, thanks for everything. And I'm like, what? You didn't have to buy, but he bought you a suit, and he'd take care of you, and he'd make sure that things are going well. Sometimes the players would challenge him, and he'd be like, they're like, well, why were you playing infield in? Because we should, and the guys would be in the food room, and he'd walk in, and he goes, well, the 3, 4, and 5 hitters, they're probably going to hit it off the wall. So if it's early in the game and you're not going to score a lot of runs off of their pitcher, then you're going to probably need to cut down the run early in the game so that you guys can have a bullpen game later. So why does it matter if they're infield in or infield deep when the guy's going to bang it off the wall? So might as well play infield in on this one. And then the guys just shut up, and you're like, yeah. Like, that's really cool.
That's the skip, man. Just shut up and listen, right? I mean, this man had a wealth of knowledge to lend to all of you guys right inside that Tigers clubhouse. Listen to the dude, right? I mean, he's a trustworthy individual who knows his thing about the game of baseball.
Yeah. He's I also learned he's like, being a manager's managing personalities, and you got 25 guys in the room, and if you can manage their personalities, then that you can get them to do what you want. So also managing personalities would mean don't let them know your personality. Because as soon as someone gets comfortable with your personality, then you're going to be okay with failing, because it's okay because you're buddies. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not okay. So we're not going to let you think that your personality is going to set in for it to be okay. So Vance Wilson is one of the most strongest minded individuals I've seen, or I guess talked to, been around. He was back catcher for Mike Piazza with the Mets and for Pudge at the Tigers. So my first 2 years, he was already down the bullpen at 5th inning. We're watching the games together for a couple of years. He's the bullpen coach for the Royals now, and he actually interviewed for the Tigers job this year. So he rolls his ankle. So Skip comes in, and he's like, "Hey guys, I don't want to get this note from the trainer saying, if you can't play, then you can just go tell the trainer." He writes it on the sheet. He comes in and sets it on the manager's desk, and you're not available for today. He's like, "That's not happening. It ain't going to happen." He says, "You're going to come tell me." So, that's the first year, 2006. He gets everybody to play. We go to the World Series, huh? I mean, it helped that Verlander's our 5th starter, and we had Zumaya in the pen, and those other guys that contributed, and Todd Jones, blah, 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 blah. Everybody was a contributor. Otherwise, we wouldn't have went that far. So there was a lot of factors. But when everybody has to play, then, that's a different story. So very next day, Vance Wilson, or that same day that he makes the speech, Vance rolls his ankle on a ball that's loose next to the cages out in batting practice, just was talking, and he takes a step backwards and just rolls the ankle right on the ball. And, he's a tough backup catcher, and he's a bulldog. So he walks into Skip. He's like, "Pick, you gotta be kidding me, dude. I gotta walk into Skip's office and be the first guy to tell him that I can't get in the lineup. You gotta be kidding me." So he goes in there and talks to him, and he comes back out. I go, "How'd it go?" He goes, "Well, little different than I thought, but he goes, that guy's good. And I go, why? He goes, because he knew that I was probably going to get off the hook because he knows my personality. But instead, he did the opposite. And I'm like, well, what did he do? He goes, you can edit this, but this is this is what he said. He goes, well, he goes, Skip, I can't play. I feel like a bitch coming in and telling you that I can't make it the lineup today. But he goes, it's all right, Vance. Don't worry about it. He goes, I'd slide through 50 yards of broken glass on a razor blade in order to get in the lineup. Because I'd break my nose on Friday, I'd be in the lineup Saturday. Some of us have it, some of us don't. It just gives them the, and then Vance's like, all right, and then walks out of the room. So, but then Vance knew the difference because that's how good Vance is too. But at the same time, like Skip wasn't going to let him feel like, yeah, Vance, I know you're tough. Get out of here. Don't worry about it. He wanted to have interaction with him, but he's so funny and he's witty, but he makes points. And then he's right up your ass about it too. But at the same time, he's buying stuff for you and making sure that you're okay. And like, he'll take care of the clubhouse kids and like a bum on the street. And like, he affects a lot of, he does it in the ways of carrying conversation. But at the same time, seeing him singing Rubber Ducky and, in the shower and doing his daily routine that, stays in the clubhouse. It was just it was good. But handling the players' personalities, and then, some guys you'd have to fluff and some guys he wouldn't. And then some guys you think that he's about to fluff and then he doesn't. And then he does it to the other guy. And it's like, man, you're pretty good at that.
Yeah, a tough guy. So a tough guy, but a big heart. And he knew you couldn't deal with everybody in the same manner, the same fashion. That was the difference with Skip. And
well, he would know that he's got a guy that came in, so and so that the kid would probably be nervous if he called him up. He just got into the big leagues. So if he knew that he wasn't going to use him that night, he would get him up. They would call down the bullpen and be like, hey, get so-and-so up. And then that kid has to feel that routine and feel the nervousness like he's about to go into his first big league game, and then he shuts him down like 3 minutes later. Say, never mind, we don't need him. And then that gets that kid's that first time adrenaline out of the way, and then the next day he'll pitch him. So that's another Skip, story that I figured you would like. All right, Jake.
He knew how to handle his staff and his club so darn well. Jake, to you, man. Okay, now it's your time to shine. Sorry about all that. I know we didn't get to you as much as I wanted to.
No. I was hearing stories that I hadn't heard before, so I was
beautiful stories.
I'm glad I was here for the experience. So
Scott Pickens, quite the storyteller too, I guess, huh?
Yes, he is.
I like it.
He's got the ADHD, so he can talk for hours and doesn't realize it's been 3 hours later.
You and I.
That's our phone call every single day that Scott and I have. It's 3 hours later, and he's like, it's been 3 hours. Feels like 30 minutes. So,
whoops.
So Jake, what else have you learned from Scott? And what do you want to pitch in these remaining minutes? We have less than 3:30 to go.
Well, I've learned a ton from Scott. I came in to the academy and he wanted me to give lessons. And I'm like, dude, I don't know anything about giving lessons. Like, I've done a lot of things in baseball, but I haven't played since high school. So I really I didn't feel comfortable enough to like give lessons. But the first day I came in and he made me he made me like feel the swing that he wanted to teach. And then that has really helped me like get to know it and get to learn it. And I feel like after I've probably been there for 3 months now, and I feel pretty confident in my ability to teach now. So like he did a really good job teaching me, and I feel like I'm able to like pass it on now. So we're trying to we're promoting like the academy. So if there's anyone that's interested in like coming to the academy, taking lessons from Scott, who's really good at teaching and has all this big league experience. And then I'm also a minor league video assistant with the Rockies. I'm a scout for Perfect Game. I worked at the USPBL. I worked at Central Michigan University. So like I have a lot of baseball experience. So we're just a plethora of information and knowledge that we're trying to teach. So if you know anybody or if you are interested in getting lessons or training, then come on down. We're also recruiting for Mid-Michigan baseball, Mid-Michigan college baseball. Right. So it's a 2-year program. We have a really good development system. It's still Scott and I. And then we also have Dana Cavalea, who is the strength and conditioning coach, award winner of the year for the New York Yankees. I don't know which year it was, but it was I think it was when they won the World Series in 2009. So he's also on staff. So we have a really good strength and conditioning program. We have a really good development program. We get you in, we get you better, we get you out. That's essentially the whole thing. We're a really good program. It's only like 3 years old, but we've grown a lot already, and we're just still continuing to grow. We have like a lot of coaches on staff. We have a lot of instruction. We're a really good program. So also, if you're interested in playing at Mid-Michigan College, please reach out to Scott or I and send us like some stats, some highlight tape, some whatever, because we want to see it and we're going to recruit.
You got Steve Robinson and Dave Damon and Kai Andrews and Zach Reed and Mitch Weiss, Dazon Cole. We got like 9 or 10 guys on staff ready to handle all this. Plus, video coordinator of the year, Jake Martin.
There we go, baby. Beautiful. Video coordinator of the year extraordinaire, Jake Martin. Scott Pickens, too, here with me. Guys, less than a minute. Thanks for all the time. Great stories from both of you. Terrific insight. And maybe we'll do this again sometime down the line, right?
You got it.